Did you sleep?
A little.
Do you know Mandarin?
A woman stares at the sunrise, haunted by flashes of a life never fully lived. The world trembles as silent, dark monoliths hang suspended in the heavy, low-lying atmosphere. Panic erupts across the globe, forcing nations to confront the unknown visitors hovering above. Students in a crowded lecture hall watch in stunned silence as the broadcasts continue. The professor abandons her lesson, her mind fixated on the unprecedented shift in reality outside. Alone in the stillness of her home, she processes the world collapsing into total uncertainty. The view from her window reveals a landscape now defined by the arrival of monsters. She reflects on the fragility of her own existence while the television echoes global dread. Memories of a child playing in the grass bleed into her present, fractured waking thoughts. Louise watches the girl run, the joy of the moment stinging with a hidden future pain. The small child plays with a wooden horse, unaware of the shadow looming over her mother. Laughter fills the air, a beautiful echo that Louise knows is destined to fade away. Night descends and she lies awake in the dark, struggling with visions she cannot escape. She stands in a sterile hallway, her path suddenly intersected by someone from the military. A cold hand brushes against her face, bridging the gap between her reality and her grief. She drifts through the hospital corridor, a ghost walking through the wreckage of her own future. Louise finds herself back in the auditorium, the silence of the students amplifying her inner agitation. She turns away from her work, feeling the eyes of the terrified young people upon her. The weight of what is coming presses down on her, despite her desperate attempts to focus. She stands before the class, her voice trembling as she tries to steady her shaking hands. The room is dim, the fluorescent lights buzzing like the anxiety vibrating through her entire soul. Louise confronts the void, the truth of time revealing itself as an inescapable, circular, cruel trap. She stares at the audience, seeing not just students but a generation facing an uncertain end. The classroom disappears, leaving her adrift in the terrifying realization of her daughter's inevitable, short life. She accepts the heavy burden of foreknowledge, preparing to walk directly into the heart of tragedy. Louise studies the strange, towering craft hovering silently above the misty Montana landscape. Inside a dark transport, she sits with others in heavy, pressurized silence. Her mind drifts to the memory of a younger self, tracing a ghost of grief. She adjusts her gear, feeling the mounting tension of the imminent, impossible meeting. A vast, dark shadow looms over the valley, marking the arrival of the visitors. The sun dips below the horizon, casting the base into a cold, twilight gloom. Louise checks her communications, preparing her mind for the alien syntax awaiting inside. She secures her headset, grounding herself in the quiet dread of the coming task. The transport continues its approach, the occupants braced for a life-altering encounter. She stares into the void, her breathing steady as they near the monolithic structure. Focused, Louise isolates the rhythmic hum vibrating through the hull of the transport. Ian scans the readings, his face illuminated by the faint glow of the monitors. They trade silent looks, acknowledging the heavy weight of their mission's success or failure. The flag on her sleeve signifies the burden of an entire nation resting here. Below them, the landscape transforms into a vast, empty expanse swallowed by thick fog. The mist clings to the ground, obscuring the path toward the alien landing site. Clouds engulf the transport as it maneuvers through the dense, atmospheric debris fields. Louise peers out, witnessing the monolithic presence of the vessel piercing the low clouds. Its scale defies reason, a silent, smooth obelisk dominating the terrestrial horizon. She watches the alien structure, mapping its geometry against her own fragile understanding. The vessel remains unnervingly still, anchored against the sky like an impossible stone. Base camp appears beneath them, a collection of tents scattered like toys on grass. She monitors the descent, tracing the lines of the encampment with growing apprehension. A sudden, sharp roar of rotors snaps her from her deep, analytical trance. They touch down, the team ready to engage with an intelligence beyond human reckoning. Louise steps into the dark, towering vessel, heart hammering against her ribs. She searches for patterns amidst the suffocating, alien shadows of the craft. The linguist stares into the void, her eyes reflecting deep, unspoken apprehension. Inside their suits, she and Ian move with practiced, fragile caution. Their lights cut through the heavy, stagnant air of the alien corridor. An unknown interface flickers, humming with a strange, pulsing, rhythmic energy. Louise reaches out, her gloved fingers trembling near the active, glowing display. She observes the shifting forms, trying to decipher the complex, non-linear logic. A sudden, resonant blast of sound vibrates through the entire ship. Panic surges as the environment shifts around their fragile, orange-clad figures. The path forward closes, trapping them within the aliens' monolithic, silent architecture. Louise and Ian brace themselves against the crushing weight of the unknown. They wait in the dark, breath hitching as the atmosphere changes again. The light spills through, revealing a massive, translucent barrier ahead of them. Louise locks eyes with the entity, searching for a spark of meaning. She struggles to remain composed while the creature's presence looms over her. The alien moves, limbs graceful and deliberate in the heavy, misty fog. It extrudes a circular shape, pushing ink into the surrounding thick haze. Ian watches, his intellect strained by the sheer strangeness of the encounter. They record every movement, capturing fragments of a language they cannot grasp. Louise stands silently, her mind working to bridge the chasm between worlds. The patterns repeat, an endless loop of symbols in the shifting atmosphere. She pulls back, exhausted, the weight of the task pressing heavily downward. She stares into the helmet, her expression hardening with resolve and clarity. She sheds the cumbersome suit, finally stepping out of the alien's shadow. Louise maps the chaotic syntax onto the dry erase board, searching for structural meaning. She paces the small room, her mind racing through complex linguistic possibilities. The board becomes a messy testament to her obsession with unlocking their communication. She pauses, exhaustion etching deep lines of fatigue into her pale, focused face. A sudden clarity breaks through the frustration as she stares at the notation. She secures her heavy protective gear, preparing to re-enter the pressurized alien vessel. Louise joins the silent, tense group awaiting transport into the dark, hovering craft. They calibrate the specialized recording equipment, desperate to capture more of the shifting ink. Shadowy, massive limbs drift through the thick, gray atmosphere behind the heavy glass. She meets the gaze of her colleague, their shared fear masked by practiced professionalism. A desperate, high-stakes question rings out into the silence of the pressurized chamber. Both researchers watch the glass intently, waiting for the alien to respond again. The massive shadows shift, their alien movements defying human understanding of physical space. Louise closes her eyes, struggling to maintain her composure amid the overwhelming atmospheric pressure. She whispers a faint, rhythmic incantation, hoping to trigger a reaction from them. The dark ink begins to swirl, forming patterns that feel like a haunting language. They stand together, two tiny figures dwarfed by the immense, otherworldly presence above. The ink clouds expand into vast, circular glyphs that hang heavy in the air. She reaches out, her hand trembling as she almost touches the thin barrier. A single, long finger presses against the glass from the cold, dark side. Louise mirrors the gesture, feeling the weight of an entire species in one touch. The alien logic begins to reshape her very thoughts, blurring her linear reality. She pulls back, gasping as the implications of their circular language finally strike. They watch the glyph transform, realizing the message is not a single word. The ink settles into a terrifying, complex map of their true, intended purpose. Louise stares into the void, haunted by the circular language that defies linear time. Ian turns toward her, his face obscured by the encroaching, suffocating darkness of uncertainty. She fixates on the rotating symbols, feeling their weight shift within her own consciousness. He remains a silhouette of anxiety, mirroring the internal collapse she refuses to voice. They sit in heavy, shared silence, suspended between two worlds colliding in atmospheric decay.
I feel like everything that happens in there.
A flicker of panic grips her as they wait for the next cryptic signal. The screen transmits a frantic global descent into anarchy, the news cycle screaming total collapse. A nightmare of grasping, spindly shadows pulses on the broadcast, signaling an inevitable, encroaching end. Louise retreats to her workstation, the glow of cold data illuminating her desperate, weary face. He tracks the digital pulse of the world, his fingers trembling over the flickering keyboard. They huddle in the temporary sanctuary of the tent, awaiting orders that feel like death. Exhaustion pulls at her eyelids while she monitors the rhythmic, alien heartbeat of the vessel. She closes her eyes and the ghost of her future daughter invades her waking thoughts. She reaches out, brushing against a phantom memory of warmth that shouldn't exist yet. Desperation drives her to piece together fragments of a language that fractures her present reality. Every keystroke is a betrayal of the life she once thought she understood so clearly. She rearranges the drawings, finding the hidden syntax of a future that promises only grief. The young girl waits by the window, her small hand tracing patterns upon the glass. Louise confronts the child, her heart breaking under the weight of an inescapable, predetermined timeline. The child offers a painting, a fragile promise of a love that will inevitably shatter. She strokes the girl's hair, cherishing a moment she has not lived, yet vividly recalls. She pleads with her own mind, begging to distinguish between the hallucination and the truth. The ink bleeds into new patterns, mocking her attempts to control the flow of destiny. The scientist stands frozen, realizing that his own research has become a roadmap for catastrophe. She steps into the mist, fully prepared to sacrifice everything for a future already written. Louise initiates communication inside the craft as the alien presence looms behind the glass. She carefully traces the circular language, seeking meaning in the shifting, ink-black alien forms. The research team watches, waiting for a breakthrough amidst the heavy, suffocating silence inside. Ian observes the logogram structure, his face pale with the weight of this discovery. Louise interprets the intricate symbols, recognizing they function as a single, cohesive, non-linear thought. She monitors the visual stream, her mind racing to map the alien logic sequence. An intense argument erupts as skepticism fractures the unity of the global scientific team. Louise recalibrates the interface, her hand steady despite the mounting pressure of the deadline. The screen displays a complex sigil, representing an abstract concept beyond simple human vocabulary. She taps the tablet with precision, narrowing the search for the core alien syntax. Faint, ghost-like memories of her daughter flicker into Louise's vision, unbidden and deeply painful. She forces herself back to the mission, pushing the grief into a mental cage. Supplies are loaded onto the transport, signaling the urgency of the encroaching geopolitical crisis. Ian stares at the logistics manifest, realizing their time for peaceful study is ending. Louise stands in the quiet dark, her expression hardening into a look of resolve. Ian searches her face for answers, finding only a profound, unsettling clarity instead. The alien visitor extends a limb, offering a new, complex logogram to the observers. Louise reaches out as the ink swirls, feeling a sudden connection across space-time boundaries. Her hand brushes the glass, absorbing the strange, shifting physics of the alien language. Visionary patterns explode in her mind, tearing through her previous understanding of reality itself. She gasps, the ink-black imagery bleeding into her surroundings and blurring her very senses. Louise struggles to maintain her grip on the present, pulled into a cascading future. Ian watches her stumble, his instinct to protect her warring with his scientific curiosity. Memories of a life not yet lived wash over her, cold and starkly vivid. The language finally clicks, revealing that to speak is to know the entire sequence. Louise stares as the monolith hangs silently against a heavy, gray, suffocating sky. She grips her coat, the weight of a sudden, chilling realization pressing inward. The vessel looms, an indifferent titan watching the earth beneath its dark, curved shadow. She turns away, breath hitching as the impossibility of the situation takes hold. Soldiers pace near the perimeter, their rigid postures failing to mask deep, gnawing apprehension. Above the valley, the craft recalibrates, its smooth surface absorbing the dim, flat light. She watches the horizon, tethered to a purpose that transcends the immediate, violent tension. A stark, isolated silhouette stands small against the overwhelming scale of the alien presence. The ground vibrates, a low, tectonic hum signaling an inevitable shift in their reality. Shadows consume the landscape, plunging the sight into a sudden, disorienting, and absolute darkness. Louise reaches out, hands trembling as the air begins to thicken with unseen static. Mists coalesce into form, wrapping around her as the boundaries of her world dissolve. She closes her eyes, surrendering to the tide of a memory she cannot yet name. Light bleeds through the haze, illuminating her face with a soft, ethereal, and haunting glow. A small figure stands alone, suspended in the vast whiteness of a fading temporal dream. White light swallows the horizon, bleaching the world of color and sound alike. Louise awakens, her pulse racing as the past and future bleed into the present. She gasps, the heavy air of the tent feeling thin and inadequate in her lungs. The clouds part, revealing an impossible spinning geometry that defies all human laws of physics. She tracks the movement, her eyes wide as she begins to map the unseen patterns. Doubt vanishes, replaced by the terrifying, cold clarity of a message she must decipher alone. The air warps into a ring of shadow, a silent, swirling testament to their intent. She tracks the ink, letting the non-linear logic of the language rewrite her very soul. They loom behind the barrier, giants of flesh and thought waiting for her final understanding. Louise steps toward the abyss, ready to trade her certainty for the truth of existence. Louise stares at the void, her mind fracturing under the weight of future memories. She breathes shallowly, the air thick with the phantom echoes of a lost life. The world around her dissolves, reality bending toward a singular, inevitable point of truth. Louise stands amidst the masked silence, her focus piercing through the veil of time. General Shang confronts her, his gaze heavy with the impending doom of his nation. She channels the future, speaking the words that will dismantle a global military disaster. Zhang listens, the tension in his face yielding to the gravity of her message. He receives the secret, a tether to peace forged in the fires of tomorrow. Louise watches him falter, knowing the cycle of escalation is finally breaking apart today. The burden of her vision leaves her trembling, anchored only by her grim purpose. She meets his eyes, a silent pact formed between two strangers across the abyss. The news cycle collapses, replaced by the crushing weight of a world shifting tides. Louise retreats into the shadows, the mission complete but her heart irreversibly marked forever. Within the flickering monitors, she searches for the final piece of the cosmic puzzle. Whispers of war fade into the hum of machinery, reality recalibrating to her choice. She finally understands the language of loss, a syntax written in starlight and tears. Ian finds her in the quiet, his presence a comfort amidst the encroaching end. They stand together as the storm breaks, watching the landscape of their lives transform. The ships ascend, shadows lifting from the earth like a nightmare finally losing grip. Louise remains still, her spirit drifting toward the daughter waiting in the golden light. Memory and present collide, the face of her child appearing in the soft glow. She reaches out, touching the skin of a future she has already mourned once. The tragedy of existence unfolds, beautiful and cruel as she accepts the final cost. Louise embraces the loop of time, choosing to love even through the inevitable pain. She steps into the sunrise, finally whole within the wreckage of her own design.